I'm going to turn it over to Karl Heinz.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Today we are talking about parks on the air and portable operating. And how many of you know what POTA or parks on the air is? 1, 2, oh, good. Anybody actually doing POTA, chasing parks or activating parks? Okay, nobody yet, but I will try to change that. So first a little bit about me. Why should you actually listen to me? Yeah, that's a good point. But I think I bring some credentials with me. Was first licensed in '94, then took a long break because my job had different plans for me. And then got back into the hobby in 2017. And shortly after that, I actually came across Parks on the Air, got really interested in it. And the way I got to POTA was through SOTA, Summits on the Air. I looked around the Rochester area, saw that there were quite a few summits there that could be activated, but then I realized I had to actually climb up on a mountain in order to do that, and decided that is not my thing. So parks are a little bit easier. That's how I ended up with parks. I have since activated 61 parks, 61 different parks, some of them multiple times, and I have chased, as of this morning, the official number was 630 parks. What activating and chasing means, we'll talk about in a little bit. And I am now also the New York State mapping coordinator for POTA. That means that I went through all 630 plus parks that we have in New York State, verified that the pins that they drew on the maps were in the right spot, that the parks had the right names, and so on. Found a few where the pins were in the wrong spots. One of them actually was just a little bit east of here, the Punkyville State Forest, which they put in the middle of Lake Ontario. I took my snorkel and my went down there. There definitely was no state forest there. So I figured out where it was.
The lake's a little high now, you know.
And that was last year.
Should have sent Susan to that one.
Yeah. So today's agenda, I want to talk about what is POTA, what does it mean to chase, what does it mean to activate. I'll throw in a little bit about portable operating in general, and then we'll talk about gear. And I brought a little bit of my gear, and you can take a look at this after the presentation. This is the stuff that I actually take out in a park, including my operating chair and my operating table. So when you read the announcement, I talked about doing this as a team, and the second half of my team is my wife Susan, who's sitting here, doing what she usually does when we go out in a park, and that is spinning. And there will be a little bit more about that later. But let's talk about POTA. When you look around, there is a lot of stuff going on that has the on the air as part of their name. The more important ones, or better, well-known ones, are summits on the air, islands on the air, but there's also mills on the air, churches on the air, lunchtime on the air, libraries on the air. Somebody's doing things on the air. You can actually look that up. So why do we need another on the air organization or event? And I'm hoping that in the next 30 minutes or so you'll find out why it was a good idea to start Parks on the Air. This is our logo. I'm not wearing my t-shirt today, but I have the Parks on the Air flag here on my hamstick.
Where'd you get that?
My wife got that for me. She knows what I like.
If you do this,
It just lets your loved ones have a whole new shopping, gift-giving event.
So let's talk a little bit about the history of Parks on the Air. Here is the official word of what it is. It's a 501c3 radio spot program that encourages portable operations from state, provincial, and nationally managed public lands. So we go to state parks, national forests, state forests, and so on, and operate from there. But when we look at the history, does anybody remember National Parks on the Air from back in 2016? It was a big success. Some parks actually had to schedule ham radio operators because they had too many of them trying to operate at the same time. So 2016 ended, and all these people, both the activators and the chasers, then had nothing to do. And that's when a few people got together and created the POTA program, because they said the idea of going out into nature and operating from there is great. We just need a format that enables us to do that with certain rules, so that we all play by the same rules. The rules are actually pretty simple, and we'll talk about a few of the more important ones in the next few minutes. Who is POTA? It started out as a small group of US-based dedicated volunteers who then recruited other volunteers and started a website, cataloged all the parks that are in the US, put them into different bins for the different states, and created a system that people could use to find out where a park is, how often it was activated, and create some statistics around that. Right now we have about 3,300 registered users on the website, and that number is growing every single day. Every day you see a new post on Facebook saying, hey, I just joined the program, what do I do now? In addition to the US program, we have other countries that are covered now as well. Australia, Canada, Costa Rica, England, France, Indonesia, Italy, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Singapore, South Korea, and Wales. And just yesterday, or the day before, they introduced the new manager of the program in the Netherlands. He is trying to start up that program there as well, which means that soon you might be able to work a park in the Netherlands. Here are a few numbers, the entities or parks per country, and when we look at this, US 5,632, biggest number. Canada is a close second, but then the others are all at most half the size of what we have here. So there are a lot of opportunities to go out there and activate a park. If we now break this down by state, and I won't make you go through all these numbers, I'll point out New York here, 634, the state with the most parks. The next one is California with 365. So almost twice as many here in New York State. We live in a pretty good state. If you want to get into POTA, New York is the place to be. This is what the map looks like with all the parks marked with a pin. See this spot here?
Any guesses?
This is, as you can see, the lake here. We have this bald spot here as well. Any idea what that is? And why is that bald? It's only one park. So there's one pin in there, which is actually one of these here. And because it's so big, it looks like there's nothing there, but you can go any place in there and operate from there. And if we zoom in a little bit more, we have Rochester. Unfortunately, when you look at this, the Buffalo area looks much better. The Syracuse area looks much better. The Southern Tier looks much better. In Rochester, we only have two parks. One is Ironic Point Bay Marine Park, up near Seabreeze, and then Lock 32. Down here we have Rush openings down in Rush, but there are a lot of opportunities within an hour's drive of Rochester. So don't let that keep you from trying to join the program and activate some parks.
Carl, why wouldn't parks like Hamlin Beach and Lakeside Beach State Park and Golden Hills, why wouldn't they qualify?
They are actually here on the map. They are just not in Rochester. You have to drive half an hour to get to them.
Oh, yeah.
Hamlin Beach is the closest one when you go on the Parkway.
Yeah.
And all the others that you mentioned are there too.
Okay.
Is this just like state and national parks?
These are state, yes, state and national parks or managed areas, because there are state forests, national forests. The Finger Lakes National Forest, for example, is on the list. Unfortunately, not all of them are on the list. They had to make a decision 3 years ago what to put on the different lists, and they missed a few. But they are saying now we are not adding anything else until we reach the point where 50% of the parks that we actually have listed have at least been activated once. So they are waiting until we all go out and activate at least half of the parks that are on their list.
So did you say national forests are also?
Yes.
They're not parks, but
They are nationally managed or state managed lands.
like the Kit Carson National Forest in New Mexico. That probably is one.
Probably. I cannot tell you off the top of my head whether it is, but you can look that up.
Okay.
I can tell you for sure the Finger Lakes National Forest is on the list, and I did activate it. So I've already mentioned chasing and activating. There are two ways you can participate in the program. One is you go out into a park and you operate from the park and get 10 contacts with not necessarily 10 different people, but 10 unique contacts with unique band, mode, and call sign. So I can work the same person twice if it's on different bands or if it's in different modes. One CW, one single side band counts twice, even if it is the same person. And I have to do this within one UTC day. So I have to start right now at 7 o'clock in the evening, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and I can go until 6:59 the following day, and I need 10 contacts within that time frame. Then on the other side we have the chasers or the hunters, and these are the people who are trying to work somebody in a park. And you may notice I'm not saying these are people who work from outside of the park. You can actually be in the park with the person who's activating, and with your HT have a contact with that person. Counts for both of you as activators. And we'll get to this in a little bit. There's actually a special category for that. So how do you join the fun? You go to the website, you sign up for an account. It's pretty easy. There are two ways you can do that. Either you create a password and a username right on the site, or you use one of their social accounts, which are Amazon, Google, or Facebook. And in this case, you don't even have to tell them what your Amazon, Facebook, or Google account is. They work with these companies to make sure that you are who you are, and then let you into the system. Which also means that these passwords are not stored on their site, which means if there's a breach on their site, nobody will get your Google, Amazon, or Facebook password. Okay, so now that we are signed up, how do we hunt? Really easy. You spin the dial until you find somebody who is in a park, you have a accuser with them, and that's it. You do not have to log anything. You don't submit your logs to the website. You don't even have to sign up for the program for this accuser to count. Actually, you don't even have to know that you're working somebody in a park for that accuser to count. And we can actually, as activators, we can take advantage of that. So during a contest, if the bands are full with other stations and I have a hard time finding a few kilobytes to put to put myself on the band, I can just work those stations that are out there, calling CQ, and they all count. They don't know that they are actually helping me to activate that part. But for me, it counts, and that makes a successful activation potentially with a lot of DX in my log. And I've had days like that. So you don't have to know what you're doing in order to participate in POTA. But you are not getting credit for it.
You asked before, do any of us hunted for POTA content? Maybe we did.
Exactly. Yes, you can actually go to the website and find out. So, but if you want credit for what you just did, it's a little bit more complicated. You do need an account. But the process is exactly the same. You find somebody who is in a park, you work them, you still don't log because only the activators log. And you repeat that, and repeat that, and repeat that. So again, no log is necessary, but every single park counts towards the awards that are possible. Awards? Wow, I can win something. So how does that work? There are a number of different awards that the POTA program offers. And the most simple award is you work 10 different parks, you get an award for that. And you work 10 more, you get another award. You work 10 more, you get another award. So there are awards for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 75 parks. And then here is the row of numbers. After 75, once you get to your 100th park, you actually enter tier 2 of the awards program until you get up here to 1,000, and then you're in tier 3, the highest tier. And these people are really dedicated chasers. So you get awards. Nobody is actually sending you anything in the mail. It's a PDF file that you can download and print yourself and then nail to the wall of your shack. So again, these are the most simple awards. Really easy, you just work one park after the other to get a certain number of unique parks in your log, and these awards will come to you. In addition to that, there are other awards, and I don't want to go into any great detail here and describe every single one of them. If you go to this link here, parksontheair.com /POTA-awards, you can find out about what these awards are. I want to point out a few special ones here. There's, of course, worked all states. If you have a contact with a park in every state in the US, you get the Worked All States Award. You can work all references in a state. Now, New York is a pretty big state, as we just learned, 634 parks. Nobody has done that yet. There are a number of states that have been completely covered, Maryland, DC, and a few more. The most I've covered is in Indiana, where there are 108 parks, and I have 75 of them. And I'm working really hard to get the remaining 33 parks. But the problem is that these parks are not areas where you have a lot of visitors. So it'll take a while. So we have that. Then we have operator-to-operator awards. If you work the same operator again and again and again, after 50 times, you get an award for that. After 100 times, you get another award. And they come in increments of 50. And then there's the Support Your Parks Award. The Support Your Parks is actually a quarterly event that the POTA program offers, and we have one coming up this weekend, which coincides with the VHF contest. So everybody who either chases a park or activates a park will get an award. There is also a special Support Your Parks event in the summer when they give out plaques. And you may remember that I wrote a little article a few months back in the RAC about an award that showed up at my door with a really nice plaque, which unfortunately I forgot today. I wanted to bring that. So during the summer event, you can actually win a plaque. Not just a stupid PDF file that you download, a really nice piano finish plaque. Looks pretty good. So there are more levels above the initial level with all these categories. So if you are interested in this, just look it up. Yes, we have a question.
Are you going to talk about activators and where they post and what frequencies they're going to be on?
I was going to ask
Just,
you about that.
just give me a few minutes. So, why would you enjoy hunting POTA activators? You are actually helping me in my activation attempts. So if you find me on the dial and I'm out in a park, please work me, because I need that QSO, especially if I'm working with the KX2 with low power. It's an easy and short exchange. All you do is you exchange your call sign, of course. That is the only thing that is required. Usually activators ask you for a signal report and the state that you work from. And this is mainly so that I have a little bit more information about who you are, so when I try to decipher what I wrote down on my pad, I can actually double check that and see whether that call sign actually matches the state that I've written down. You can win awards, as we now know. It's easy because it doesn't even require you to submit your log. So it's really just making contacts. It makes you a better operator because you can actually work a pileup every day and see whether you can come up with tricks how to break that pileup and be the guy who gets the QSO. You will make friends all over the world. If you work the same guy 50 times, he will remember your call sign, and then maybe you will exchange a few more words than just your call sign, your signal report, and the state. You can do as much as or as little as you want. So there is no schedule, there is no no requirement to do a certain number of QSOs to participate. If you want to do one a month, that's fine. It will take you a lot longer to get your awards, but that's fine. As long as you're out there and finding these people in parks, that's all you need to do. And then, of course, you can help us activators by, for example, telling me that you just heard somebody calling ParttoPart, somebody that I may have missed because the guy is operating QRP and has a hard time competing with all the people running legal limit. So the only thing we don't do is we don't relay information. So if I cannot hear the other guy directly when there's nobody else interfering, I don't want you to get in the way and saying, hey, it's Bob, this is his call sign, and he's in Indiana. Let me make my contact on my own, otherwise it doesn't count. So, you want some of these awards. What do? You spin the dial, you try to find somebody who's calling CQ POTA. And people do that, and it's actually amazing. There's this guy, Mike, in Michigan, and he is on the bands every single day. And a couple of times, I was just done tuning up, and I call CQ POTA, and he's right there. Without me posting where I am, without anybody else knowing where I am, he's there answering my call. But there are a few tools that we can use to make this actually easier. You don't have to spin your dial for an hour. There is the POTA spotter, which is part of the POTA website where people can spot either themselves or you can spot somebody who is in the park. And that means you find out what park they're in, what frequency they are on, and their call sign. And you go to this website, put in all that information, and then I can look it up, or you can look it up, where somebody is. And I'll have a screenshot of what it looks like in a little bit. You can also sign up for the POTA Facebook page, and people post on Facebook as well. Hey, I'm in Park K2001 on 14250, and I'm waiting for you. Or you can search through the DX clusters. Sometimes people post POTA activations on DX clusters as well, and you just search for the keyword POTA or a park identifier. And the park identifier is, at least in the US, K dash followed by a 4-digit number. So with this, you have the tools to find people who are out in parks right now. Actually, it's probably a little bit too late for that. Chances are right now there's nobody out there. But this allows you to not just search around, but really aim for somebody and say, okay, I'm dialing in this frequency, I'm listening, can I hear something? Is it the guy in the park, or is it just the chasers that I hear? You wait a little bit, try to figure out what people are saying, and then you say, oh, here he is, he's calling CQ or QRZ, and then put your call in and see if he answers.
Karl, I would imagine there's more activity in the summer and much more activity on the weekends, maybe, than there would be during the week. Would this be true?
That is true. Tuesday is usually the slowest day, I can tell you that. But a lot of people are retired.
Yep.
And some of them actually travel from park to park and do big roads and activate 10 parks, 20 parks in a few days, within a few days. And there's usually always somebody out there. It's just a matter of whether you can hear them or not. Yes?
I had a question about the hunters and the chasers.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, if they don't submit logs, then how are the contacts verified by the activator?
They are not verified.
Ah,
So
okay.
I usually don't rely on my logs. If you show up on my log, I've booked you. Now, sometimes I may not get your call sign correct, and I may credit somebody who doesn't even exist. Doesn't happen too often, and usually eventually you'll find out that something is wrong. And that's why I do this double check with the state. So I'll punch in that call sign into qrz.com, and if the correct state comes up, then I know, yep, good. If it's not the correct state, then I'll try to scratch my head and say, okay, what could that mean? Is that an R? Is that a T? What did I write down?
It's nice to know it works on the honor system.
Yeah.
It really is.
Carl,
Yes.
Speaking of the honor system, how do we know that you're really in the park that you say you are?
You don't. You don't. But
You don't have to take a picture.
I actually post pictures on Facebook, yes. So you can actually see usually at least, I've had a few of those.
Well, it has trees in it.
You know, I
So
would
here
think
you can see there's a sign that is clearly in a state forest.
most people that are participating in this, though, are doing it honorably and for the fun of it.
Yes.
I mean, it's a hobby, it's a fun hobby.
Exactly.
Some of them you can't, some of them are not even anything. It's like, there's no parking lot, there's no nothing. There's maybe a little sign that says you're on state land, And you're in the middle of nowhere and there's like a swamp, and some of us stay in the car. Because there's like no bathroom, there's nothing.
Take a picture of the trees.
I have plenty of those, yeah.
Oh, once there was a bear.
Yes.
That was exciting.
We didn't see it, we just heard about it. Somebody was driving by on a little golf cart saying, "Did you see the bear? Did you see the bear?"
Goodness, I didn't.
That's why I carry a long stick that I can also use as an antenna.
Did you work the bear?
No, I did not. Didn't have his license yet. So, here are a few tips for hunting. So we already talked about the POTA spotter. Part of the POTA spotter is also is the scheduler. People who know in advance that they will be in a certain park, especially if it's kind of a special park, like last fall somebody traveled to Alaska and scheduled a few national parks in Alaska and posted that. This allows you to say, okay, I want this park. So I'll put that on my calendar. On Tuesday, February, whatever, Bob will be in Park XYZ, and I will put that on my calendar so that I remember to turn my radio on and look for him. So you can take advantage of that and find out about activations before they actually happen. Then follow social media for spontaneous activations. I usually don't know where I would be a day in advance, so I don't use the POTA spotter. But I will post on Facebook. Actually, let me correct it. I will not use the scheduler. I will use the spotter. So when I'm in a park, I will spot myself if I have internet on my phone, and then also post on Facebook. Watch the POTA spotter.
How far have you and Susan traveled to be able to activate a park?
Florida.
Okay.
So over Christmas, we activated 3 parks in Florida with all my equipment in carry-on luggage. So that's why I have the little KX2 here.
But we've done everything within almost an hour, over an hour on that map.
Yep.
So now to go anywhere, we have to go almost an hour and a half. We've got to go to Buffalo or Syracuse. Everything between Buffalo and Syracuse and south, we've pretty much done.
Yep.
You've already done, yeah. Very nice.
There's Slack, which is another online thing, which is usually used for work groups to communicate between each other. But we use that also for notifications about activations. And that allows you to have your phone actually buzz every time somebody's out there. So if this is what you want to do with your day and with your life.
But at night, it is muted, okay? Okay? It's muted.
So,
Bedtime,
yeah.
sleeping.
If you want to get as many parks as possible, sign up for Slack. Use phonetics when you talk to somebody and slow down. If I did not get your call sign the first time, you rush through it. Chances are if you don't slow down, I won't get it the second time. Because chances are that there are 10 other people yelling at me at the same time. So slow down, use phonetics. Makes it much easier on us on the activator end. We all know about the DX Code of Conduct. Be nice to each other. There are too many jerks around that we have to deal with on a daily basis. When we're on the ham bands, just be nice. And then, of course, help out the activators by spotting us. If I'm somewhere without internet access, which amazingly enough is in a lot of places in New York State. Once you go down to the Finger Lakes, there are a lot of dead spots. So if you hear me on the air and I'm not spotted, do me a favor, go to the spotter page, put my information in so that others can find me as well. This is what the spotter looks like. We have these panels with information about one activation each. So starts out with the call sign 84XT at park K3715. Then we get actually the name of the park here, which also is a link, and when you click on that, you get a little map to see where the park actually is. So if you have a beam, you can point it at that point. You get some more information. Then we have the state it's in, the frequency the person is on, the spotter's call sign. So if I spot somebody, this will be my call sign. A comment, and then when this spot was actually published. So if there's something on there that's 25 minutes old, which was not refreshed, chances are that guy is not out there anymore. So you can actually find out how old that spot is, and after half an hour it actually drops off and disappears.
The bear got it.
Yes. At the top we have a search. You put in the K-number and you again get that panel with the map and some additional information about the park. We have the activations, which is a link to the scheduler, and then just a link to the POTA Map to see where parks are in a certain area.
Karl Heinz, have you done this as a hunter from home, or do you basically go out and...
The 630 contacts that I made as a hunter were mostly from home. I probably have about 50, I don't know, between 50 and 60 from a park. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. These are so-called park-to-park contacts, which have a certain significance. So here we see some of these awards that you can get. I'm going through 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 75. We go to tier 2. Now they look nicer. And the last one that I got was a 600. I do not know what the tier 3 awards look like.
Yeah.
So once I get to 1,000, I get privy to that. And then I said there are other awards, like the operator-to-operator awards for 50 or more QSOs with the same person in the park. So this is with KUAT Tom. I had by now probably 120, 130 contacts with him while he was in a park. He's from Indiana. That's why I have 75 parks in Indiana. He travels a lot. So that's all I wanted to say about hunting and chasing. Now let's move on to the activator part. There are awards as well. So before we get into what it actually is to go out and activate what you need, let's talk about the awards. And the basic scheme is the same. You activate a certain number of parks, you get an award. So for 10 parks, 10 different parks, you get your first bronze level activator award. The next level is 20, 30, 40, 50, just like with the Chaser Awards. But in addition to the Chaser Awards, there are certain award categories that are specifically for activators. And the first one that I want to talk about is park to park. If you only operate on HF when you are in a park because, for example, you live next to Pinnacle Hill, I guess Tim left, then you wouldn't be able to get any hunter credit unless you work somebody who's also in a park. So when you do that from one park to a different park, you get credit for a park-to-park contact. And when somebody calls CQ from a park, and you are in a park as well, you don't just yell out your call sign, you say park-to-park. And hopefully the person on the other end can hear that and says, hey, everybody quiet, I want to work the park-to-park first. Or somebody with a louder voice says, hey Bob, you have a park-to-park. And then the activator says, everybody quiet please, I want to listen to the park-to-park. who's the park to park out there? And then you come back and say, hey, I'm in park XYZ, and then that gets you credit for, both of you, credit for a park to park contact. And after you have 25 of those, you get an award. And I think by now you get the theme. This is really a lot about getting awards, and that is what motivates people to be at home and chase these activators, because every now and then you get a piece of, actually not a piece of paper, you get a PDF file that you can print and produce your own piece of paper. The next special activator award is the Kilo Award for having 1,000 QSOs from the same park. Not in one sitting, you don't have to do this in one day. So you go back to the same park over and over again, because you've eventually covered every single park within a few hours driving from your home. So if you cannot take these long parks on the vacations, you just go to the same park again and again and work on getting 1,000 contacts. Yes?
Can you work the same person
Yes.
on 2 different weekends?
Yes. As long as it's a new day, you can work the same person again. In addition to the Kilo Award, the other thing you can get is a repeat offender award. So if you activate the same park 20 times, you get a repeat offender award. And then there are other increments as well for that.
Those are like Block 32 or the Marine Park, where we don't have all day, we're just going to go out, test some new equipment.
Yeah, and usually these are really short activations. I put up my antenna, and half an hour later I'm done, and we pack up again.
Where do you set up on Lock 32?
In the parking lot.
Right there in the parking lot?
Yeah.
With a
In the
vertical?
parking lot with
Yeah.
bikes everywhere. Everybody
There's
has
this
bikes.
little strip of grass between the two areas of the parking lot. Perfect. And there are trees around it, so you can hide your vertical in there. Nobody knows. Yes.
Do you know why just Block 32 is one of the parks on the air and not any of the other locks on the canal? Or?
It's a state park.
It is an official state park, yes.
And none of the other?
I assume none of the others are.
Okay.
There's a state park in Canandaigua. It's on a little island that you're not allowed to go on.
Yeah.
Carl, the way I see this too, one of the finest advantages is getting out, getting some fresh air and looking at the scenery and just...
Exactly. Yep. Not looking at the same old wall all the time. Another interesting award is the RARA, or Rapid Deployment Amateur Radio Award, where you try to do several activations within the same day. So you have at least 2 activations that are, if you're traveling by car 6 miles apart, you can start earning these awards.
Our record is 5 parks, 1 day.
6. 6.
I thought that there was a minimum of 10 QSOs?
Yes.
So how does that balance with the take 2 and then move?
You have, actually in this case, for one transition to count, you only need 5. I don't want to go into any details here. It doesn't count as an activation if you only have 5, but it counts for this award. So the way we do it is, I have 10 plus contacts in one park, we move, 10 plus contacts in the second park, and I end up with 100 contacts that day. Can really rack up your QSOs when you do that. So here are some of these awards that you get as an activator, and they look exactly the same as the Chaser Awards. The only difference is it says activator up here. And I don't have any Tier 2 awards here to show because I've only done 61. This is a park-to-park for 50 park-to-park contacts. This is a Radar Award, the Cheetah, for 5 different parks within a 24-hour period. So now that we've gotten the awards out of the way, let's talk about activating a park. What do you need? A license. a radio, an antenna, a power source. Now the POTA program, unlike other programs, doesn't tell you what kind of power you can use or you cannot use. SOTA, for example, you need a battery. You cannot operate from your car. Here, nobody cares. If you live within, well, actually, when you live within a park, then your own house is not public property. But if you camp in a park, for example, that just happens to have a power outlet, you plug in your radio, your regular ICOM 7300, nobody minds you doing that. You take whatever you have, whatever works for you, into a park, and if you can make it work, if you can get your 10 contacts, good, that's all you need. So, we said license, radio, antenna, power. You need some sort of logger that can create a native file. We do not support paper logs. You log in the park potentially on paper and then hack it on in the computer. But once you submit that to your regional coordinator, it needs to be a native format, because they don't want to spend any of their time converting your file, because they're all volunteers. So pretty much any logging program that makes sense to use can export native. And then of course you need the desire to have fun. And it is a lot of fun. Now, there are some rules, and one of the most important one is that all your equipment and yourself have to be within the park boundaries. So if you find a power outlet that's just outside of the park and you plug your extension cord in there, you are no longer in the park with all your equipment. Your extension cord goes out, and it doesn't count. Now, there's no POTA police that comes around and says, hey, you cannot do that. It's again, honor system. We assume if you claimed you were in the park, you actually were in that park.
And if you don't like it, tell it to the police judge.
So, how do you activate? We have the radio, we have the antenna, we have everything that we need, and it's all inside the park. How do we activate? We make 10 simplex QSOs from within that park on any frequency that you have covered in your license. You can even use a satellite. The only thing you cannot use is a land-based repeater. So you get your 10 contacts, CW, SSB, digital. People are starting doing FT8 and PSK now, AM if you want. You may have a hard time finding people to chase you with some of these modes, but they are all legal.
What's your primary mode?
Single sideband. And my primary band is 40. That's my bread and butter band. If I run out of contacts before I get my 10, then I switch to 20, but usually it's 40. And usually it's not a problem to get my 10 contacts on 40. POTA recommends that you stay within the general portions of the bands, because that just increases your audience. If you work in the extra segment, then yeah, it's pretty quiet down there, but chances are you don't have that many people who will actually chase you.
And some of us have had it for the day. Go to the fast one, honey. Go
So,
to the fast one.
stay within the general band, much easier to get your 10 contacts. There's no specific exchange that you have to use. Required is really just the call sign. If I can hear your call sign and you can hear mine, you're good. You're in the log and it counts. But again, just to make sure that I don't screw up when I try to decipher my handwriting, I also want a signal report just to be on the safe side, and your state. And if you want to give me your name too, I'll write that down as well. Then log the date, time, band, and mode that you've used in any logger that can export to ADIF. Submit that ADIF file to your call area coordinator. And that's important. If you have a 5 call like me, even though I operate in the 2 area, I submit to the Region 5 coordinator. So it's based on your call sign, not where you operate from. Chances are your coordinator will suggest a file name format so that when they get 100 log submissions, they can actually figure out what goes where and not credit the wrong person, which happens sometimes. A couple of weeks ago, all of a sudden I had 10 additional park activations credited to my account from Florida during a time that I definitely was not in Florida. So turns out that 5 coordinator got things a little bit confused and ended up crediting me with 10 activations that another K5 made. So by having a file name format that the person on the other end actually expects and knows how to work with, you can try to avoid these problems. Some more stuff to consider before you go out to a park and activate. What counts as a park? Only parks that are listed on the POTA website. If you find a state park that's not listed, they forgot about that and it does not count yet. Now, as the mapping coordinator for New York State, one of my jobs also is to keep track of things that should be added to those official lists. So if you come across something where you say, this is a state park, this is a national park, or something like that, and it should be in the POTA database, send me an email with some information about where it is, what it's called, and potentially a link to the state site or national site where it says, yep, this is what it claims to be. I will keep track of that, and once they're ready to add new entities, I will submit that.
Have you gone to Seneca Falls, to the national
Yes.
park there?
Yes. From the parking lot.
It was
And it
like
was
5
closed.
degrees that day.
Yes, it was cold.
Like it's going to be tomorrow or Friday.
Now, if you want to activate, start out by chasing. Don't just grab your equipment, run out the door, set up in a park. By chasing, you can actually learn from experienced activators how they handle an activation, what the rhythm is that they use, how they deal with pileups, how they deal with people who just scream their call sign in when they're not supposed to, and stuff like that. And that helps you then, once you go out, to do a better job. Research the parks you want to activate before actually going to where the pin on the map is. Even though in New York State all of them should be correct now, as far as I know, there's nothing at the bottom of the lake. So if you find something that looks like it could be there, please tell me and I will correct it. But sometimes there are opening hours that just conflict with your schedule and you won't be able to actually go into the park. Sometimes where the pin on the map is not where you want to be because it's the middle of the swamp and there are snakes and other bears. So by researching on the New York State DEC website, for example, they will have little maps of all these state lands with information about where parking lots are, how to get to them, what the best way is to get in, so that you don't have to drive around to find a way in the park or the forest. So there are resources out there. It's just a matter of Googling and finding that information.
Do you have certain frequencies that you commonly use on 40, on 20 to make it easier?
No. This is up to the activator, and some people have preferences. So I know certain people who will always be around 7,180, for example. Other people will be around 7,230. Tom, for example, the guy who I have more than 100 contacts with, he's usually up there, 7,230. So you learn the preferences of the different people that you deal with eventually, but the spotter really helps to figure out where somebody is. So just spinning the dial is usually not the best way or the most efficient way to find a POTA
Is
activation.
there a lot of activity on CW?
There actually is quite a bit, more than I thought it would be.
Well, it would be the most efficient way to go if you're operating QRP. I mean, you know, you're gonna get through a hell of a lot easier on CW than you are on sideband.
Yes, but there's still a lot more sideband than CW, and just a tiny bit of digital at this point in time. So how do we call a CQ? As I said at the beginning, the other party may not even know that they are working somebody in a park, so you don't have to call CQ POTA. But in order to drum up some business for yourself, it's a good idea to do that. And you would usually do something like CQ parks on the air, CQ parks on the air. This is Kilo 5, Kilo Hotel, Kilo activating K2001. So you get your own call sign in, you get the parks on the air in, and you get the reference in that you are at. And you don't have to do the reference every time, but every now and then, just for people out there who are not using the spotter so that they know where you are, just mention that. If you have a cell phone connection on your, or network connection on your cell phone, spot yourself. Makes your job so much easier. If you do CW, schedule an activation, because then the reverse beacon network, yes, the reverse beacon network will be used to pick you up and post you, spot you automatically. So if you do a CQ POTA K5KHK, K5KHK, K2001, they will pick up that CQ call, pick out your call sign, figure out where you are, and put you on the spotter with the DB information that the reverse beacon network provides and who spotted you. So we talked about why you would chase a park. So why would you activate a park? Because if you live right next to Pinnacle Hill and you have an S9 plus 20 noise floor, if you're in a park and for the first time ever hear what S0 sounds like, it's amazing. So that is one of the big draws for people to go out and activate in a park. Now, when you are at Lock 32 and have all those power lines going by, not so much. But in the middle of nowhere, usually around those same areas where you don't have any cell phone connection,
There's no noise.
there is no noise. But usually these places also come with beautiful views. So not only are you experiencing S0 or S1, but you also have a lot of nice stuff to look at. The other thing is, it's a little bit of MacGyvering yourself through problems when you are out in a park, because things go wrong.
Like right now.
Like right now. I may have just run out of battery. Just a second.
But he always has more stuff.
Can you also talk about when you have set up or are setting up and a park ranger comes up and says, "What are you doing?"
Yes, we'll get to that in just a minute.
We had that happen in Florida, and it turned out that he was kind of a ham.
Yeah, not really a ham, but he knew about.
He knew about ham radio.
He knew about ham radio. He spent some time in the Navy, and the ship had a ham shack.
Okay.
And he still remembered the call sign of the guy in charge of that. And he was into shortwave listening. So he knew about antennas, he knew about grounds.
Do you have the 100-watt PA for the KX2?
No.
No, you don't.
No.
So, like, most of the time when you go out, it is always QRP?
No, I have Yaesu FT857 here as well. So when I activate from my car, or when we drive into a park in this area, then I take the Yaesu with me. If I travel by airplane and I need to carry on my stuff, then it is the KX2.
Gotcha.
Now I just have to fill some dead air here because the slideshow is still rebooting. And it would help if I would remember what the last slide was.
Where do the part numbers come from?
Why activate a park?
So how do you, Susan, how do you not get a ham license when you're, isn't this contagious?
Oh no, I'm knitting and spinning and I am a happy camper, listening.
She has her own ham, probably give him another license.
Yes, that's the only
That is the
disadvantage.
only thing that he has
Yes,
to complain.
I would get a lot more ParttoParts. So one of the biggest thrills about being in a park is you create a pileup. How often can you do this from at home? When you're not out there in a remote island somewhere that everybody wants to work. Here, you are the cause for a pileup, and you have to manage your pileup. So that is fun. I'm running a little bit late here, so I'll skip the website. You can explore that on your own. One of the most asked questions on the Facebook page is, so what radio and what type of antenna do I need? And I've actually seen the question about the antenna twice yesterday. It doesn't matter. Whatever you have will work as long as you can power it, as long as you can schlep it out into a park, it will work. It doesn't have to be state of the art. It doesn't have to be the most effective antenna. A wet noodle will work. Because any antenna will have a strong signal to somewhere. It's just a matter of whether there's somebody there to actually receive your signal and reply to you. But usually you get out there. And especially with 3,300 chasers and the number growing every day out there, there will always be somebody to talk to you. And it may take an hour to get your 10 contacts. But eventually you will get your 10 contacts. And it doesn't matter how advanced the equipment is, how much money you paid for it, or how little you paid for it. It will work for you. Now, chances are the first antenna you get will not be the only antenna you will use in a park. Eventually you'll figure out that in certain instances something works better than something else. And then you pick and choose and say, okay, today I will use this or that. But whatever you have will work. There are quite a bit of YouTube videos out there that talk about parks on the air where you can actually watch somebody doing it. And you see pretty much any radio starting with a QRP rig up to a state-of-the-art digital SDR radio. Use whatever you're comfortable with. Don't use something that's completely new to you because there is a lot that can go wrong and will go wrong. So use something that you're comfortable with, familiar with, where you know, okay, I push this button and that happens. And you don't have to figure out what happens when you push a certain button in the field. Trying to read the manual on your phone and trying to figure out the radio. QRP does work, but for your first few activations, I recommend use a little bit more power. I tried to start with QRP and it was tough. I had, I think, 4 unsuccessful activations because I didn't know what I was doing and I just was not loud enough. So, cut your teeth with a little bit more power, and then once you know what you're doing, you can turn the power down or use a smaller radio. But don't start out doing QRP. I don't want to go too much into detail about the equipment that I'm using. You can download this presentation probably in a couple of days from the RARA website and then look at all these nice pictures and the setup that I'm using. You can also just walk by this table and see everything that I show here actually live on the table. The only thing I want to say is, as far as antennas go, every antenna is a compromise. And it's just a matter of which way you want to push that compromise. If you want to carry a lot of weight with you, chances are you will have something that radiates better than something that's really light. If you want to travel with just carry-on luggage, then that limits you to something that fits into your suitcase and doesn't cost you extra money to bring on the airplane. But it will also potentially mean that you will wait a little bit longer for the first QSO to come in. So,
Does TSA bother you at all with equipment going through an airport?
so far not. Again, a few more pictures, a little bit about power. You can read that all when you download the presentation. So a few more words about why POTA is a lot of fun and why a lot of people enjoy it. POTA is accessible. There are so many references parks out there where you can just drive in and operate from the parking lot, where you don't have to rough it and bushwhack your way through the woods to get to a good spot, that it makes it really easy. So again, unlike soda where you have to climb a mountain, here it's really, if you have everything in your car and ready to go, just drive in on the parking lot, extend your antenna if you have to, and start operating. You can fit whatever you want to do towards your needs. If you say, I'm at a campground and I just want to rag chew all weekend long, you can do that. You get your 10 contacts and every contact may be half an hour long. But at the end you will have a successful activation. Or you can do a rapid fire activation where every QSO is 7.5 seconds. POTA accepts logs from any time. So if you were in the park 5 years ago and you still have that log, submit it. It counts. Also, if you chased any national parks on the air parks in 2016, you may already be in the database. Just create an account, log in and see if you have any credits. You may already have earned an award. A lot of people, actually I shouldn't say a lot of people, but there are some people continuously working on the website and the program and advancing it and adding new features. So every day or every week you find something new on the website. The links to the maps is something that was added just recently. So in addition to exploring new parks, you can also explore the website and find new stuff there every now and then. And then of course all modes are welcome. So if CW is your thing, nobody says, hey, you can't do that. If you really want to do an AM activation, try it. Chances are you will get your 10 contacts, and a lot of people may just try AM for the first time, only to get your contact. And you may just find new fans for your favorite mode. So try it out. Enough of the theory. How does it work? I don't want to go through this. Download the slide deck tomorrow or the day after and read through that. This is really the script that 95% of all activators use. And once you tune into an activation, chances are you'll find that exactly on the air as well. How do you log? If you want to log in with the computer in the field, do it. But in my opinion, it's just one more thing that can fail in the field or run out of power. So I log on paper. Now this is from one of my early activations. Now my log looks a little bit more more structured, cleaner. I figured out what works and what doesn't work. Some of that stuff didn't work. But you learn. Every time you learn something new. Tim mentioned we are going out to a park for an operating event. Multi-operator activations, there is such a thing. And people do this all the time, where they have 2 or 3 activators, either all sitting around the same microphone or everybody operating a different band at the same time. Big advantage here, it's really easy to get your park-to-park contacts, because you just use your HT, you walk a few feet away from each other and you make a contact. As long as whatever comes out of the speaker is louder than what you can hear through the air, in my opinion, it counts. So there will be a lot of fun trying all these things when we are out in the park. What can spoil the fun? Wildlife, bears, bugs, coyotes,
lots of bugs,
alligators, weather. Be prepared to pack up quickly, depending on how you operate. If you are out there with a little table and a chair and it starts to rain, you better work quickly to get your radio into a dry bag. Bring sunscreen, bring water and a snack or a picnic. Park rangers, sometimes they don't like what we're doing. And when you operate in wildlife management area, for example, they are really picky about what they allow and what not. In that case, operating from your car, from the parking lot, may be the way to go. Usually parks don't like it when you put stuff into trees. I should say state parks, national parks, because you could actually transfer a bug from one park to a different park riding on your antenna wire. That's why they don't want you to put stuff into trees. So that is why we have self-contained antennas.
At the wonderful park here in the middle of town, which one is it, Phil? What is it? The park with the famous park in the middle of town here.
Mendon?
Highland Park. Highland. They don't want you to put anything in the trees.
Yep.
Not one thing in the trees. They don't want to damage the trees.
Yep.
Pulling any wires or any ropes across the trees, the bark trees.
So get something that stands on its own, that doesn't use any other support, and you are usually fine. Also, if a park ranger asks you what you're doing, don't tell them you're broadcasting, because we're not broadcasting. If they hear broadcasting, they think fees. You need to pay a fee to be a broadcaster in a park, because that's how they make money, or some of their money. Contests. Sometimes you just cannot find a free spot on the band. Run with it. Use them. As I said earlier, every contact counts. It doesn't matter whether somebody answers your CQ POTA call. If you answer a CQ in the WWDX contest, for example, and you get an Iceland, hey, good. It counts twice. It's one more DX country, and it's a QSO that counts for the park. QRM, that is a biggie. Yes, usually we expect that we have these low noise floors when you go out in a park, but there are power lines and antennas everywhere. So try to stay away from them, and you end up with a much quieter RF environment. Yes?
If you're in a park and it's a contest weekend, you could also be doing the Parks on the Air Get Your 10 QSO contest, as well as entering the contest as well.
Right, right.
You're not restricted to one or
No, just because you submit a log to POTA does not mean that you cannot submit the log to the organizer of the contest. It counts double, yes. Park fees. If you go to state parks, it's $6 or $8 every time you drive in. Get an Empire Pass. Eventually, it really pays. And if you keep your pass and just renew it without them having to send you a new card, you get a nice discount. While you're in the park, bring your family. They may not enjoy what you are doing, but there's usually so much other stuff that goes on in the park where they can go off and have fun. Take advantage of your surroundings. Enjoy the view. Pick up a geocache or two.
We could do an hour on geocaching, because we have 635 of those. And there is always geocache in the park.
And pick up a piece of trash. Leave the place in better shape than the way you found it. And educate others, because usually people see your antenna and they want to know whether you're tracking bears or what you're doing. Tell them what you're doing, and you may actually recruit a new ham.
What specific antennas do you use? Do you use mobile type antennas like Tar Heel, or do you use verticals? What do you use?
I have a Wolf Rubber coil here, which is a vertical with an adjustable coil.
Right.
I have the small version here. Usually I have the 213-inch whip on it. I have a 6-foot mast here for an end-fed random wire, and I have a ham stick.
Okay.
So the ham stick is a bad weather antenna, or when I don't have enough room to put my radios out. If I can get away with anything else, I'd like to have something a little bit better than the ham stick, but the ham stick works.
Right.
We are getting close to the end here. One other thing that I wanted to mention that, and this is the main reason Susan is here, it is uninterrupted crafting time for your spouse if you sit there for 2 hours operating. And we usually have the electric spinning wheel on the same table as the radio, as you can see here from those pictures. I have a list of resources here that you can look at. One thing I want to point out is I wrote a blog post about logging for POTA. So if you want to activate, you may want to review that because it has some information that I learned over the last year and a half, and it's what I currently do. So people tell us that the bands are dead, and I found this quote on the POTA Slack channel. Aaron says, POTA is like magic. You think the bands are dead, then you call CQ POTA, and all of a sudden the bands open up. So it doesn't matter how many sunspots are out there. If you call CQ POTA, people will find you and work you. I have a couple of people to thank. Julie Martin, K8VOX, actually did a presentation at Hamvention last year, and I borrowed quite a bit of information from her for this presentation. Jason is the guy behind the POTA program, and he is the guy who sends out all the awards, but he also provided me with some actual current data about number of users and so on. Go ahead.
How is this program financed? I didn't see anything about...
It's a 501c3, so you can actually give them money and get a tax credit for it. They do sell stuff like the flags, t-shirts, stickers, and the stuff is a little bit more expensive than what you would usually pay for it, so they make some money off that. But it's really not that expensive for them to run this. I assume that most of the cost is in running the web server and providing the data connection for the server.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Are you on the air this weekend?
I will be on the air. I will actually be in a park because it is the special weekend, so I want to get my award. And I also want to combine that with the VHF contest, so I will try to get at least one contact on 2 meters, on 220, and on 70 centimeters. Because that all counts towards another award when you have 10 different bands in one park.
What park are you going to be in?
I don't know yet. Either Ironic White or Lock 32.
But not 6 meters.
I will try that too.
Nice job, man.
Thank you. And I hope to work with you all as a hunter when you go out and activate your first park.